All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to dive deep, I mean really deep, into the microscopic world. We're talking about the one thing that makes up every living creature, the cell. So let's jump right in.
So let me kick things off with a question for you. What do you, that tree over there, and a tiny little bacterium you can't even see, what do you all have in common? I mean, what's the fundamental building block for all of you?
Yep, you guessed it. The answer is cells. And this whole story starts way back in 1665 with a guy named Robert Hooke. He was peering through a microscope at a super thin slice of cork, and what he saw were these tiny room-like structures. They actually reminded him of the little rooms, or cellula in Latin, where monks lived. So he called them cells, and boom, just like that, our whole understanding of life started to change.
Okay, so what is a cell, really? Well, to put it simply, it's the most basic building block of life. It's the Lego piece that builds everything. Whether you're a single-celled organism or a complex creature with trillions of them, like us, every single thing that keeps you alive is happening inside these tiny, incredible structures.
Now, figuring all this out didn't happen overnight. Oh no, this was a slow burn. After Hooke's initial discovery, it took almost 200 years. That's when Matthias Schleiden figured out, hey, all plants are made of cells. And then, a year later, Theodor Schwann had his aha moment and realized, you know what? So are all animals. And those two ideas together really formed the bedrock of what we now call cell theory.
But there was still a huge piece of the puzzle missing. Where do cells come from? Then, in 1855, Rudolf Virchow dropped a bombshell with this simple but profound statement, omnis cellula e cellula. It's Latin for all cells come from cells. That's right, they don't just pop out of nowhere. Every cell comes from another cell. This was the final, crucial piece that locked modern cell theory into place.
All right, so we've established that everything alive is made of cells. But here's the next big question. Are they all the same? Absolutely not. In fact, life on our planet is fundamentally split into two camps, two main types, based on how their cells are built. It's the Great Divide.
So, on one side, you've got your prokaryotic cells. Think of them like a simple, efficient studio apartment. Everything's in one room, no walls. They're pretty basic, there's no real nucleus, and their DNA just kind of hangs out in the middle. Bacteria are the perfect example. But then, you have the eukaryotic cells. These are the sprawling mansions of the cell world. They're way more complex, with a proper nucleus to keep the DNA safe and sound, and they're full of all these little rooms and specialized structures called organelles.
And guess what? We, and pretty much all the life you can see around you, are made of those eukaryotic cells. And here, we're looking at two of the most common types, an animal cell and a plant cell. Right off the bat, you can see they're a little different, right? They've got different shapes and some unique parts, even though they share a lot of the same basic machinery. So let's break down those key differences. See, plant cells have this super rigid outer layer called a cell wall. That's what gives them that fixed kind of rectangular shape. Animal cells? Nope, they don't have that, which is why they're more round and flexible. And plants have a couple of other exclusive features, like plastids for making food from sunlight, and this massive central vacuole that's basically a giant water tank. Animal cells just have a few small ones, if any.
Okay, now for the fun part. Let's shrink down and take a tour inside one of these bustling eukaryotic cells. Think of it like a miniature city. All those little structures we mentioned, the organelles, they're like the power plants, the factories, and the waste management systems, each one with a critical job that keeps the whole city alive and humming.
And our first stop on the tour is right here, this little bean-shaped thing. This is the mitochondrion. And a cell isn't limited to just one. Some have hundreds, even thousands of them, especially cells that need a ton of energy. So what's their big deal?
Well, this is where the magic of energy production happens. Mitochondria take the fuel from the food you eat, and through a process called cellular respiration, they convert it into a molecule called ATP. And ATP, that's the energy currency for the cell. It powers literally everything.
Because they're responsible for generating all this energy, mitochondria have earned a nickname you've probably heard before, and it's perfect. They are, without a doubt, the powerhouse of the cell.
Okay, tour continues. Now, any busy city creates trash, right? The cell is no different. It's constantly producing waste and has old parts that need to be dealt with. And for that, we head over to the city's sanitation and recycling center, the lysosome. These little guys are basically small bags filled with super powerful digestive enzymes. You can think of them as the cell's cleanup crew and recycling plant all in one. They go around breaking down junk, gobbling up invading bacteria, and even dismantling old, worn-out organelles into bits and pieces the cell can use again. Now here's the crazy part. The enzymes inside are so powerful that if a lysosome were to burst, it could actually start digesting the cell from the inside out. Because of this, they've earned a pretty intense nickname, suicidal bags of the cell. Yeah, a little dark, but you're not going to forget that one, are you? All right, we've seen the power plant and the recycling center. Now it's time for the main event. We're heading to the very heart of the cell city, the place where all the decisions are made. This is City Hall, the control tower, the absolute brain of the entire operation, the nucleus. The nucleus is in charge of everything. I mean everything. Growth, energy use, making new parts, even when the cell divides. And how does it do all that? Because it houses the cell's most valuable possession, the instruction manual for life itself, the DNA. It's all tightly coiled up and organized into these structures we call chromosomes.
And speaking of chromosomes, get ready for a wild fact. We humans, we have 46 chromosomes in our cells, right? Well, a simple, single-celled amoeba has 250. 250. It's just a perfect example that having more chromosomes doesn't mean you're more complex. It's just how you're built.
So, okay, we have this amazing cell city with a control center that holds all the blueprints. The next logical question is, how does the city expand? How does it repair damage or build a whole new city next door? Well, that brings us to our final stop today, how cells multiply. For most of your body's needs, like growing or healing a cut, cells use a process called mitosis. It's like a carefully choreographed dance in 4 main steps. First, the chromosomes copy themselves and bunch up. Then they all line up perfectly in the middle. Next, the copies get pulled apart to opposite sides of the cell. And finally, the cell pinches in 2, leaving you with 2 brand new, perfectly identical cells. Clone complete.
But making a whole new person is different. You don't want an exact clone. For sexual reproduction, cells use a special process called meiosis. Now, this is a 2-part dance. The goal here isn't to make perfect copies. It's to shuffle the genetic cards. The end result is 4 totally unique cells, think sperm and eggs, and each one has only half the regular amount of DNA. This is what creates genetic diversity. It's why, unless you're an identical twin, there's no one else out there exactly like you.
And that leaves us with one last big, mind-bending question to think about. We just said that mitosis makes identical copies, right? So if we all started as just one single cell, which then divided into billions of identical copies, how on earth did we end up with brain cells and skin cells and heart cells and all these different types? How do they know what to become? Well, that is a fascinating story for another time. Thanks so much for joining me on this tour of the cell.